I'd like to take a moment to review our general operating procedures for you. Our meeting is divided into two sessions, the public hearing session and the deliberation session. In the public hearing session, an application or a group application on the agenda is called. The applicant makes his or her presentation. Commission members ask questions, if any. Members of the public make their comments. Only 4 people may speak for an agenda item and 4 against. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes, subject to questions by the commission. After 4 minutes, a loud beep will indicate 1 minute left to speak, and at this point, please summarize your comments. After all opposition speakers have finished, the applicant will be given time to respond. If you do intend to speak, please come to the podium, speak into the microphone, and give your name and address for our minutes. Please direct all comments to the commission only and not to the applicant or the audience. Please remember to speak directly into the microphone. On routine applications, the applicant may simply raise his or her hand if there are no objections to the staff recommendations. I will then announce that the applicant is in full agreement with those recommendations. If there are any questions, the applicant will be given an opportunity to respond. After hearing all applications, the commission will go into deliberation session. In the deliberation session, the commissioners discuss each application with input from the staff as necessary, but with no input from the audience. The commissioners then vote on each application, and the results of the voting can be learned from the planning department. If some issues arise in the deliberation session that were not addressed in the public hearing, the chairman has the discretion either to allow additional comments pertaining to those issues in order to resolve them, or to call for the application to be held over for discussion at a future meeting. Occasionally, 1 or more commission members may recuse themselves from discussing and voting on a given application. A recusal does not necessarily mean the member is directly involved with the application or the applicant. Depending upon circumstances, ethical rules may require a recusal when there is only the slightest appearance of a conflict of interest. If a regular member recuses, a supernumerary will vote in their stead unless both supernumeraries are already voting due to absences. The Planning Commission makes final decisions subject to appeal on subdivisions, planning approvals, and planned unit developments. The Planning Commission only makes recommendations on zoning applications, with the City Council making the final decisions. Please turn off all cell phones at this time. Commissioners and staff, please remember to turn on your microphones when speaking. I'm going to call roll. Mr. Carlos Gant. I'm Libba Latham. Ms. Denson. Mr. Valles. Ms. Sessions.
Here.
Mr. Doyle.
Here.
Mr. Atchison.
Here.
Ms. Andrews.
Here.
Mr. Amberger.
Here.
Ms. Rich. Mr. Hembry.
Here.
And Mr. Cameron. We have a quorum. Okay, we're going to get started. The first application up for review is 4870 and 4900 Bass Drive, Riverbend Estate Subdivision. Is the applicant present? He is not. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone here to speak against this application? Okay. Number 2, west side of Rangeline Road Service Road, which is the Trifecta Development Subdivision. Is the applicant present? Applicant indicated that he is present and in agreement with the recommendations. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone here to speak against it? Number 3, Mount Zion subdivision, 1012 Adams Street, 302 Kennedy Street, and 1013 Basil Street. Applicant is present and are you in agreement with has indicated he is in agreement with the conditions?
Holdover.
Is there any, yes, sir? Would you like to come down and speak?
I'm Pastor Montgomery Portis. After reading your staff report, there's the house that we was talking about. There's a demo already taking care of the house. And I saw it, I do have the building permit number. And the permit number is BLDR-002182-2017, issued date 04/13/2017 for 302 Kennedy Street. And that house has been already demoed.
Okay. So it's all been removed?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the application, this application? Is there anyone here to speak against it? Thank you. Number 4, 5383 US Highway 90 West, Tillman's Corner South subdivision.
Good afternoon, Ron Bordon. I'm with Pan American Engineers, 1717 Jackson Street, Alexandria, Louisiana. I've read the staff report, and actually we're coming here to make the same request we did at the April 20th meeting, and that's for a reduced setback to accommodate the current site plan that we've worked through site plan approval on. And the issue came up when we got to the subdivision plat approval phase, where they requested we dedicate right-of-way on Halls Mill Road side. And with the dedication, it actually shifts the setback back accordingly. So there's a 25-foot setback. We were understanding that from the city that was 5 feet would be taken for the dedication on Halls Mill. Surveyor actually reported back, once we laid it on the site plan, it's a little over 10 feet. And at the April 20th meeting, we requested that the setback be reduced to accommodate the current site plan. And it was understood only 5 foot be taken, so we were given a 5-foot reduction in the setback. But in actuality, once you plot it out, we need a 10-foot reduction. So we're again asking to accommodate the current site plan, because if you, with the 10-foot dedication, the setback encroaches in the overhead canopy area and the dumpster area. So as clarification, want to accommodate the current site plan, and therefore it would reduce the setback to 15 foot. Are there any questions?
So you're asking for an additional 5 feet? Is that what you're asking for? From 5 to 10?
Correct. There was 5 feet granted because it was understanding that 5 foot would have to be dedicated to the city. Surveyor came back and said, no, it's actually 10.03 feet. So I reported back to the staff. They said, okay, I think we can change this in the decision letter. But then after speaking to the staff, they said, look, why don't you just come back before the planning commission, because it's could be different than what was understood at the meeting. So that's why we're here today.
I think most of us remember the application, and we remember that was an issue with the awning, but we don't remember the specific details. But
I have a handout. I think everybody should have received one. It shows a red hatched area on 11 by 17 sheet of the site plan. The red hatched area is if there's no setbacks, no reduction in the setback. That's the encroachment. It's on the corner of that overhead canopy and within the dumpster enclosure area. So in order to get those within a setback, in other words, if we shift the whole site to the west, we encroach in the front setback. So it's a very tight site from Highway 90 to Halls Mill. So that's what we're saying, hey, whatever is going to be dedicated to the city, give us that same reduction in setback, and we'll comply. Because both the front and the rear of the canopy are right at the setback limits.
I think the concern is we're setting precedent by giving too much of the easement. What's staff's opinion?
We do have conditions ready should the commission choose to consider approving as requested. There may be some design solutions other than adjusting the setback, but as the commission did it at the previous application, we went ahead and prepared conditions for today. One thing I need to point out, and I believe we did last time, is even if the commission adjusts the setback to accommodate the canopy, they will still have to apply to the Board of Zoning Adjustment for a variance, because the zoning ordinance has specific setbacks for each district, and it would be a 25-foot setback in this case as well.
How did it change from last meeting? It sounds like there was changes in the dedication?
Yes, sir. The previous dedication appeared that it was only going to have to be 5 feet. And in all reality, as he said, it's actually 10 feet. So that is what's making the encroachment even more than it was at the last hearing,
Because the dedication grew.
because the dedication grew, yes,
But the
sir.
canopy is still the same distance from the street as it was when we approved it last meeting.
At this time, yes, sir. Should the road be widened, it would not be the same distance from the edge of pavement.
Are there imminent plans to widen Halls Mill Road?
I can't answer that.
Yeah, I don't know that there'd be any plans to widen that road in the future. I do have one question. It looks to be the dumpster enclosure, or the dumpster itself, it looks like though it could be easily accommodated. I mean, it looks like you could adjust that over and get that out of that setback.
You're correct. The dumpster enclosure could probably be shifted. There may be some issues with actually accessing it with the truck, but physically, I think we can get the dumpster outside of it. The primary issue is the canopy.
canopy.
And we're just asking, hey, our client is willing to dedicate property to the city to accommodate this needed right-of-way. We're just asking you to reduce the setback accordingly, whatever the city's gonna take. So that's the request.
So was there an error on the original site plan?
The site is exactly the way it was approved. It's the same original site. I think the confusion came with the understanding the city was only taking 5 feet at the April meeting. Surveyor came back after plotting it, and we superimposed it on the site plan. It's actually 10.03 feet. So he said, Ron, we need a 10-foot reduction in setback, and we thought that could be administratively changed with the decision letter, because I think the intent of the planning commission at the April meeting, and I made the request specifically, if you look back at the video, to approve the site plan as it is. And I think that's what everybody thought was happening, but it's actually 10 foot instead of 5 foot, so that's why we're back before you today.
I have a question for Doug. In terms of precedent, if the dumpster was able to, if that was no longer a problem, if that was, if they could move that to be within, what we require, providing the setback for the canopy, what kind of precedent does that set? Because it's not going to be, touching the ground. Well, does that, set a precedent for actual buildings, kind of encroaching into the setback, or what's your opinion on that?
I think we could defend the decision by stating that, like you said, the site plan was approved originally as submitted, and there was just a misunderstanding. Yes, the fact that it is an overhang and not an actual physical improvement on the surface does make it different.
Richard,
Mr. Olson, is there another vehicle for them to do this without changing the setback, basically getting a variance for the overhang through Board of Zoning Adjustment?
They can get a variance and would be required to obtain a variance from the Board of Adjustment regardless of what the commission does today. However, with that 25-foot setback, it does further complications in the future, like clouds the title because there is an encroachment on the recorded setback.
May I make a a point. I did talk to the staff, actually. Ms. York informed me that you cannot receive a variance from a setback through Board of Zoning Adjustment. So I would like a legal opinion. If we're not going to make a decision here today, I was told I can't get a building setback variance. Is
Incorrect.
incorrect?
Variances can be obtained for setbacks.
Okay, thank you.
I think the confusion comes in that the board cannot grant a variance to a specific condition placed on any type of approval by the planning commission. So that may have been what was trying to be conveyed. And as Bert was saying, they can't grant a variance from a subdivision requirement. Their variances can only be related to setbacks, in this case, as required by the zoning ordinance. They can't grant a variance to a subdivision
So if
requirement.
we give him what he's asking for today, he still has to go before the Board of Adjustment?
Yes, sir. And as I said, we do have conditions. Have you seen the conditions?
I've seen the revised conditions. I guess it's basically giving us what we're requesting today, to approve the site plan as it is, and with the dedication, just adjusting the setback accordingly to accommodate the site plan. So I do understand it, and I'm okay with the revised conditions here, because it's 15 foot instead of 20, and I think we'd be in compliance.
And just for clarification, the commission could add to that the relocation of the dumpster enclosure into, I guess, behind that 25-foot setback?
Yes, ma'am. The commission could even modify it to have the setback follow the part of the canopy that encroaches, because you're not proposing any other encroachment.
That's correct. If it was just that specific structure, we can jog around it at that point.
Yes, sir.
I'm okay with that. I don't quite understand, if we're granted a reduced setback from this commission, why are we going to the Board of Zoning also?
Because the zoning ordinance requires a 25-foot setback. The commission, through this application, cannot grant a variance to a setback required by the zoning ordinance.
Okay,
Through the subdivision application, all they can deal with are the requirements of the subdivision regulations.
okay,
So if they amend it to jog around or be 15 feet continuous, you still have to apply to the Board of Zoning Adjustment for a variance from the zoning ordinance setback requirements.
What's the next available meeting? We've pushed off closing on this project until next week, but if I've got to go to Board of Zoning Adjustments, can you give me an idea of when I have to push back closing on that?
I believe the notices have already done for July, so it would be the August meeting.
The August?
Yes, sir. And that August meeting, let me get my calendar up real quick. August meeting will be August 7. Filing deadline is going to be July 5th.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to this application? Thank you. We'll move on to number 5, which is Lipscomb subdivision, south side of Lloyd Station Road. The applicant is present.
Jerry Bird, Bird Surveying Company for the owner, Ms. Lipscomb. Her desire is to split this lot, very big lot, into 2 so that she could give 1 lot each to 2 daughters. Recommending for denial, yes, the plat did have the present plat has a restriction on it, no further re-subdivision until more street frontage is provided. March the 9th, this commission approved a subdivision very, very similar to this, where a man had a lot, wanted to split it 2 ways, That plat was plat restricted also, no division, but it was approved and it is now on record. Yes, one of our lots is flag lot. The site that we're proposing is the yellow. There's a flag lot next door to it. There's a flag lot across the street and a flag with a very odd shape over here. We feel like that this would be a not abnormal lot to be in the neighborhood, and she would be able to give those daughters a lot. But would like your consideration for approval. The one lot is the flag lot. The other one has 75 feet of road frontage. It's an odd shaped lot, but you can build right at the road if you wanted to. But that's not their desire. They want to get back off of the road to build on it. But your consideration for approval, yes, would be appreciated.
Mr. Byrd, this is in the city limits, correct?
Sir?
This is in the city limits?
Yes,
Okay. And this is for family purposes, right?
family purposes.
Jerry, can you repeat again what application you stated was approved with the prior deed restriction? Because we don't recall that.
It was March 9th. Hold on.
Of this year?
Yeah. It's in Forest Hill Woods. And this is the plat that was recorded as a result of it. Same thing. No further, where'd it go? No further re-subdivision until additional.
One of the differences is these were not flag lots. These were, it was one large, almost square lot. They divided it into two rectangular lots, each with the minimum 25 foot of frontage on a dead-end street. I think and I'm speculating with my memory here, this was Forest Cove subdivision. I think the reason for that condition was to ensure that it wasn't going to be more than two lots because of the size of it. But I'm looking it up in just a second.
On that particular subdivision application, the staff recommendation was the same as this one. The original plat says no further re-subdivision, and then it was held over so the staff would have time to prepare approval, conditions of approval.
Mr. Olson, while you're looking for that, I'm going to ask if there's anybody else here to speak in
Okay.
favor of this application. You're fine, Mr. Byrd.
On the lot we're looking at now, that was part of a two-lot subdivision previously.
That's correct.
And where on here was the other lot that was part of it?
It's this square here with a flag.
Can you,
This one. The balance of that lot
there you
doesn't
go.
show.
The one on the left that has a flag, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that one. It's this orange piece here.
Michael, why don't we go ahead and proceed and we can discuss this in deliberation?
Thank you. Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to this application? Thank you, Mr. Burke. Number 6, 3456 Stein Avenue and 304 Dogwood Lane, Parker Estates subdivision. The applicant is present and indicates he is in agreement with the conditions. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone here to speak against it? Thank you. Number 7, 3740 Latigo Road. This application has been recommended for a holdover. Applicant is present and indicates he is in agreement with the recommendation. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor of this? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to this application? Yes, ma'am, please come on.
Yes, how are y'all today? Ladies and gentlemen of the Planning Commission, thank you for the opportunity to address you today. My name is Jane Summer, and I live at 3761 Latigo Road, which is across the street from the southeastern corner of the development, where there is a proposed retention pond at the lower part of the property. At least that's what we're believing it to be because it says common area. I have a handout that I turned in that gives you the approximate contours. It's D1. It gives you the approximate contours of the property, and it shows you the flowing of the water. I have that one, and then I have another one, D2, that has the natural swell of the property. Do y'all have those? They look like this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I'm sorry, ma'am, I do
So
not.
we're at the far, we would be right down here in the far corner, right across the street from that. When we turn onto Latigo Road and we leave the hustle and bustle of Scott Dairy Loop and Dawes Road behind, we enter our little slice of heaven. There is no other neighborhood around us like ours. Our road is 6/10 of a mile long, and it's a minimal, dead-end, narrow country road. It is paved. The homes are built in 1-acre lots up to 8.7-acre lots. There are no homes that are smaller than 1,500 square feet in size. We have open space with 100-foot tall trees on our properties. This gives us peace, tranquility, space to breathe, and enjoy the outdoor area of our property with little impact from our neighbors. The developer of the property is asking that 30 homes be built within 8.2 acres. That is 1.5 times the amount of homes that exist now on Latigo Road, making this subdivision so unlike what our neighborhood is all about. If the developer wants to build 8 homes on 1-acre lots, our neighborhood could retain its original design and purpose. There are going to be at least 2 cars per lot. That is 60 cars or more coming just from the 8 acres alone. We have at least 3 to 5 cars per homes already. That is over 100 cars a day that will be coming and going down our paved dead end. It's unlined, it's uncurbed, narrow country road. Traffic already backs up past our street to the school. This will be a huge traffic issue for all neighborhoods in the vicinity, not just ours. People from our neighborhoods as well as ours love to walk our dead-end country road because of the serenity and peacefulness. The kids love to ride bikes, ride go-karts, and four-wheelers. It is just that kind of road. People love our dead-end country road and want to be here so much that a house just sold within 3 days on our street. Yes, homes will sell, but homes that have space where people can breathe and live without reaching out the door and touching their neighbor. The 30-home subdivision will no doubt be a blight to our dead-end peaceful neighborhood. Our dead-end country road will not be able to handle the amount of traffic being proposed. Our roads will not be able to handle the hundreds of construction vehicles, cement trucks, and our vehicles that normally use our road. Will our road hold up? Our road's only been paved 1 time, and that was 10 years ago. There was a joke made last time about a fire truck not having enough room to turn around. Well, we have a neighbor recently with an issue, and one came along with an ambulance, and they turned around at the end of the road just fine. But in this subdivision, the fire truck will not be able to even get in due to the cars parking on the street. The fire truck will have to weave in and out of the parked cars, and then to turn the curb in the back is going to be impossible for emergency vehicles. The normal truck is 19 feet long. So the driveway that is 20 feet long is going to leave it hanging over the sidewalk because you're not going to go right up to your garage door. which is going to render the sidewalks useless. The driveways need to be at least 40 feet long due to insufficient parking. You got parties, family gatherings, repair vehicles, et cetera, that will be parking on the street. And the overflow is going to be all parking out on Latigo Road. We feel that the retention pond is not sufficient to hold the water. There's and also another handout that says how you figure how much the water. For 8.2 acres of land with 1 inch of rain will produce 222,649 gallons of water that would drain to the east side of Latigo Road. This would require a half-acre holding pond to hold 16 inches of water for every 1 inch of rain, and we all know that it rains more than an inch in Mobile. We've already received 3 inches of rain for the month of June. But there is a provision called the City Storm Water Ordinance. We are asking that you require a 100-year storm, 2-year discharge, storm water pond, due to the fact we have a natural wet weather drain behind our homes on the east side of Latigo Road that travels downstream to Turkey Creek. There is a tremendous amount of water that travels downstream due to the water flow of our homes and the 2 subdivisions from the north that have been allowed to drain through our yards. It has toppled fences, uprooted trees, erodes yards, floods garages and sheds. It is a flow of water that is 25 feet wide or better. I'm almost done. As I have stated, the water flows into Turkey Creek as we ask the water still flow in sheet form, not pressure form, to keep down erosion. If the developer planning to guarantee that the subdivision will not add to our existing disaster of drainage issues, and how is he bringing in the sewer and the water due to no access on the back road? And we still do not know how big those lots are. And that's all we have. I had some pictures of floodwater in our yards, but I don't know.
Thank you. Can you send a copy of those?
Yes,
Is
ma'am.
that what these photographs are?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
The subdivision is in the planning commission, correct? Yeah, I mean, planning jurisdiction, yeah, but outside the city.
Is there anyone else here to speak in opposition to this application? Yes, sir.
I have a picture that I would like to give to somebody if I could. My name's Paul Shelley. Appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak to you this evening. My address is 3715 Latigo Road. I actually live right dead in the center of the street across from this piece of property. I have 2 acres. I've been living out in this community for 17 years. We've actually had a couple of schools built out by us. We got a bunch of kids on our street that actually walk to school because the buses don't pick them up. And we probably got about 30 cars on our street. And like I say, that's going to end up putting another 60, 70 more vehicles on our street. One of my main concerns, though, is the flooding. When I first lived there, we do have a drainage. That is an easement by the county going through our property. But we've really never had water 4 or 5 foot wide. Over a period of the last 7, 8 years, they've actually come in and put a bunch of neighborhoods up around Scott Dairy Loop and Johnson Road, and they all have holding ponds, and they all bleed off and bleed into other holding ponds, and then eventually into Arlington Oaks, which is about an 1.5 acre holding pond, about 30 foot deep. Once it fills up, it actually starts coming through our yard, and if you could show the picture, it could actually show y'all all what our backyards look like. And to be honest with you, it takes about 30, 40 foot across the back and about 8 foot deep. It gets pretty bad now, and it had never been that way. We brought in rocks, dirt, grass, tried to slow it down. There's nothing to slow it down, and it's just eroding our grounds up as it is. And if they do this, to be honest with you, the plat that they presented, the land we're right in the dead center, it crowns to the north and the south. And then at that point in time, they got to have a holding pond on both sides, because with all the rooftops and the driveways, the road easement at least needing to be 50 foot coming around with sidewalks and stuff. That's just going to let a lot of water just right off on top of us to where I'm almost washed out as it is with what's coming down on the backside of me from the other neighborhoods. And like I say, we don't have no complaints about somebody coming in there trying to put, even if it's 10, 15 houses, but 30 houses on that much property, there's not going to be no way whatsoever for that water to seep in the grounds and to go away. And it's just going to wipe all of us out on the south side, which would be the east side of the street. And last time when we come here, it was about a year ago, this same project, and y'all actually did tell them to give us some standard lot sizes, and they come back in with the same plat without standard lot sizes, and it's really and truly what they're trying to put in is, I don't believe that they're gonna be able to do it. I'm in construction, and I've never seen a neighborhood that's had 30 houses on 8 acres, especially out in our area within a 10-mile radius. And we just wish that y'all would consider the flooding, consider the kids walking to school with all the traffic coming down the street. And there again, if we do this, that somebody would come in and fix our road back up after all the construction goes on, because it's gonna mess us up pretty bad. Our street is not really but about 20 foot wide right now, and if you know that that's very narrow of a street for 2 cars to be passing each other at one time. My neighbor actually mentioned that one of us had problems a while back. One of our neighbors had a heart attack. Ambulance, fire truck come down the street and they couldn't even turn around. And it's pretty bad. So to be honest with you, that we all think it's a very bad idea and that there would be a better place to put this neighborhood down the road. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else here to speak in opposition to this application?
Let me just briefly state, this is Bert, that the minimum lot size for this development will be approximately 7,400 square feet and will be 60 feet wide and 124 feet deep, and that would be for the most rectangular lots that are in the middle part of the development. So these would be the smallest lots in the development.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name's Betty Bell. I'm actually a resident of Arlington Oaks. We are the neighborhood adjacent to Latigo Road. We experience the same problem with water runoff, and we have a retention pond which is about 3 acres, so you can imagine if we have a problem that they really have a problem. Actually, they've covered most everything I wanted to represent here, but I did want to mention the fact that it just really seems odd that this subdivision is being put in the middle of this little street, and the only way in or out of it is going on Latigo. If there was an entrance from Scott Deary Road, which is the main street in our area, then it might be different, but it just doesn't seem practical to put something in the middle of a subdivision like this. The other thing I wanted to mention, my main concern is that I feel like in our particular area that we're just being oversaturated with new growth. In the last 10 years since I've been in this area, there's been 9 new subdivisions built within a 2 square radius, mile radius. That's quite a lot of people. The traffic is really bad. We have 2 schools at the end of Scott Deary Loop that are basically getting terribly overcrowded. My grandson had 30 students in his class, and there were 5 5th grade classes, so I'm sure they all had basically the same amount of students, which is a lot. There's no, to my knowledge, there's no plan to build new schools. We have 1 middle school in our area, which is Causey, and then we have 1 high school, which is Baker. And Baker, right now, I understand, has anywhere from 2,500 to 3,000 students, so it's already overcrowded, in my opinion. So that's basically what I wanted to make sure that, I mean, I understand we need the economy, we need builders, we need new growth. I just think that, as this gentleman expressed, we should have it in another area. We're just getting too saturated in our area. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Dell. Is there anyone else here to speak in opposition to this application? Are there any questions from the commission?
Question for staff. I know this is likely to be held over.
Excuse me, Mr. Atchison, I'm sorry, I didn't see them coming down. Can you hold that question?
Sure.
Or Mr. Doyle, whoever asked it.
My name is Susan Mabry. I live at 3655 Latigo Road. We've lived there approximately 26 years. And my concerns are pretty much the same as everyone's else. I sent a letter to you, and I think you've heard it before. Mainly our concerns are these 4 things. The builder of the subdivision has not come through with good plans so far as we're concerned. We're worried about the drainage, we're worried about the traffic, and we're worried about the concern, as has been said before, of putting a subdivision right in the middle of a dead-end road. Drainage, of course, is a concern. Traffic is a big concern. It's reached the point where they had to put a crossing guard at the 4-way stop on Scott Dairy Loop because in the mornings and afternoons people could not get to work. And so now we're sitting 30, 35 more people trying to get our road out of our road, which is extremely close to the schools, down to a 4-way stop that's already congested. And it just seems to me that a subdivision on a more accommodating road would make more sense. Finally, as my neighbors have said, it really doesn't fit our community, our neighborhood. We are houses that are, many of them built in the 70s on 1.5 acre, 2 acre lots. We've improved our houses, but we like where we are on this peaceful country road, and we really are concerned about the change in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
Mr. Doyle, I'm sorry.
as I said, this will likely be held over, but if staff wouldn't mind reminding me, this project's in the county. I remember discussions the last time it came up that as a planning commission, we're limited in the things that we can enforce, specifically maybe with stormwater and some other issues. If you just, if you're able to refresh me kind of on those discussions, I know there's a lot of people here that may not be able to come next time, so thought it might be beneficial.
Well, the staff always recommends, and it's something that the Planning Commission adopted years ago, that in the county, when there is a subdivision of multiple lots, the subdivision is supposed to comply with the City of Mobile's stormwater management ordinance, and it requires a placement of the note on the final plat stating such. Unfortunately, because it is in the county, the city does not have the authority to review what they actually install to comply with the stormwater detention requirements. The county does not really have the authority to enforce the city's requirements. It's somewhat of a catch-22, but that note is on the plat, or would be on the plat, and they are, by signing it and recording it, agreeing to do such.
But at this point with the site plan, we don't have any calculations, engineering's not reviewed, any sort of stormwater.
No, sir, and that's typical of any subdivision application. They generally do not have those calculations done until they've received their approval from the commission.
And then apply for a land disturbance permit. And we wouldn't see them again, though. That would
No,
be
sir. All of that would be done through the county.
Yeah.
So the last time we saw a plan for this site, they were claiming it to be innovative, and that's no longer the case. But the other thing that came up, and that I think is here again, is just the idea of this plan being out of character with other subdivisions in the immediate area. Is it correct that the Planning Commission can make that determination if a proposed subdivision is not in character? There is grounds for denial?
I guess the best way to answer that is in the subdivision regulations, and I was looking at this during earlier just to make sure, because I figured this question was going to come up in some form. Under the subdivision regulations, land to be subdivided shall be of such character that it can be used safely for building purposes without danger to health or peril from fire, flood, or other menace. And land shall not be subdivided until or unless adequate protection is made for drainage, water supply, sanitary sewage, and access. as well as other improvements required by these regulations. And unless adequate community facilities, including schools and park and recreation areas, are available in reasonable proximity to the subdivision. There have been situations in the past where an application was denied based on out of character with the neighborhood when it was a flag-shaped lot or a subdivision of a lot in the middle of Spring Hill that didn't fit with the character of that particular street. Just cramming something into an area that just wasn't fit. In this situation, you have a large piece of property that the owner has the legal right to subdivide, use, develop. And just because the lots on one side of this road are 7,500 square feet, and the ones on the other side of the road are a third or half an acre, to me is not meeting a legal standard of being out of conformity with the neighborhood. And the owner has a legal right to use his property. This is out in the county. One of the opponents said, it's just too much development out there. Well, that's just happens. I'm sorry, but I don't think this is going to meet the legal standard of being out of conformity with the surrounding area to where you could deny it just based on that.
What about on the stormwater situation? I mean, the flooding looks pretty bad, and, it's a safety concern.
Yeah,
The board decided.
Absolutely, and, I see Mr. Orwell here. I think he is the engineer. There you are.
He's come to
And, if the engineer acknowledges that, yes, they understand there's a drainage problem and represents to y'all that he's going to do A, B, and C, or he's going to design it and build it according to the subdivision, to the city stormwater requirements, then that might be enough for y'all to be able to say, okay, we're going to let it go, and we're going to approve it. I'm not sure, and Rick or someone else can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure I can recall a subdivision like this that was denied just because of drainage issues in the surrounding area, because we don't have drainage calculations now.
Right.
I do have one question for Mr. Orrell, if you'll come up. I know this is going to be held over, but I think this question needs to be answered now. In the staff report, it says that because of the size of the lots, it's going to have to be connected to
sanitary sewer.
Sanitary sewer, and that's the plan, to bring sanitary sewer down
That's
on
the
Figaro
only,
Road?
yeah, that's the only way we can. With this size lots, if not, it'd have to meet 15,000 square foot minimums. So the intent is to bring sewer from the north down the south on the west right of way would be the intent here. So all lots would have sewer. It would open up sewer to along Latigo Road up to this development and up to Malls to carry it further if they ever saw fit or someone else chose to develop from there.
So this would connect into Moss lines?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, it seems to me that it is trying to put a lot into a small area. I mean, the lots are
And that's
really small.
typical of the area. If you look in the general vicinity, okay, in the general vicinity, I'm not speaking to Latigo Road in particular, but in this area of West Mobile, there are pockets upon pockets of 60-foot lots. This is a development that meets both the city and county criteria. We are in the county where no zoning exists at this time. The setback criteria, the staff mentioned some things they wanted in here. I'm going to address that with the developer, and we'll look at that. In terms of the density, last time, initially this thing started, the developer asked to get 50-foot lots. That is done in places in the county. That's been reduced. We've abandoned that plan based on pushback and the Planning Commission's decision. The reason this came back up, they've been waiting on this major street plan, has been revised or removed so that initially there was a big setback going to be placed on the rear of this property. That was recently removed, and so the developer asked to move forward with this. I believe the last application had a density of, I believe in the report, 36 lots, and we're here at 30. So we have made changes there. The density itself is going to be controlled by the drainage. I mean, what the drainage gives you, what type of detention is done at the time by the engineer will determine if this number of lots even is going to meet. I do not see any, it cannot exceed this without coming back before you guys.
Are
So
you talking about the city guidelines or the county guidelines for drainage?
that's up to both the engineer and developer, honestly, and the reviewer with Mobile County, and and the planning commission, of course. Yeah, I mean,
obviously,
because he
like
did
Richard just
state in
said, I
there.
mean, you know, we can have the requirements for city, but there's no.
It's the I mean,
there's no
it's just in
enforcement,
in real world out where I'm at.
Right.
It's up to the engineer of record, realistically, probably
Because
to
obviously
enforce
drainage
that.
is an issue based on the pictures that we've seen.
Oh, absolutely, but the thing that needs to be, I pointed this out a year ago. Everyone keeps pointing at drainage, keeps pointing at us as the bad guys. This is undeveloped. I mean, so we're not causing an issue at this present time. This whole area is booming. I live in the area. I understand exactly what's going on. But
Yeah,
we're meeting all the minimums. That's all we're attempting to
Right,
do.
and that's what I mean. Again, I'm very familiar with the area as well, and it looks to me like it's just face value, it looks like it's too much into a small area. But having said that, if you're meeting the requirements, there's not going to be a whole lot that we can do to really prevent from being developed. Now, the out of character argument we just talked about, that's not really an argument for the area. But, you know, the biggest concern would be the drainage, and the biggest concern, I'd also like to hear what Mr. May has to say about the fire access and accessibility. 'Cause a lot of times these small neighborhoods do have issues with parking on the streets, and your fire truck has to zigzag to get into the neighborhoods. I can see that being a major concern. So any comments from the fire department?
Well, it would be a concern if it were in the city limits, but just as an oversight or as an overview, we do have difficulty in neighborhoods with that kind of density of homes because there's not enough place to park cars, and sometimes we have issues with access.
Did you say it would be a concern if it was in the city limits?
Yes.
Is this in jurisdiction? It's not-
Well, if it's outside the city limits, then the city fire code does not apply.
Is the purpose of the planning jurisdiction to make it so that we have standards that are consistent with city standards in the event of annexation?
The intent of the jurisdiction is to have a certain minimum standard that is no less than, or in most cases, we try to have it no less than the city standard because of annexation. Also, if it's within the police and fire jurisdiction, to ensure that the responders have safe and adequate access within their jurisdiction.
So then there is concern potentially of access?
Well, as long as it meets the minimum requirement, but again, it's a policing issue. You know, in density areas like that with that many homes, there's going to be cars parked on the road. And so it creates a policing issue for the fire department to go out there with fire lanes and things like that. But for, again, for us to make a determination, it's outside the city limits. The fire code will not apply. The state fire marshal would be the entity to make the decision. But if you're just asking an opinion on whether or not it would create some difficulty, I can say that in the city limits where we have high density like that, we routinely have access issues.
Mr. Earl, I have a question for you.
Sure.
When if you get approved and your construction trucks travel back and forth on Latigo Road, y'all will repair whatever.
That's a county road. I can't, it's really hard. I don't really deal in construction itself. I would say that would be an enforcement of the county in terms of the quality of their road. I know that was brought up, but that's a county issue. It's not a city issue. Their maintenance department or inspection would have to be the enforcement agency on that. I can't really speak to that.
Okay, thank you. Do you have anything else you'd like to address the?
I don't think so. I know
Neighborhood
I'm just asking that you hold it over so I can at least address the concerns of staff, and we'll reconvene then.
I mean,
I
I'm sure
understand
we'll.
that. In all likelihood, because it's the staff has recommended to hold over, it probably will be held over, but since there's so many folks here today, we
Sure.
wanted to give them the opportunity to be heard.
Sure, we'll hold it up. But the question I have, I mean, when we come back on the July 20th meeting, if you could bring all the information as far as trying to address the concerns that the neighborhood has.
Sure, sure.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Orwell. I believe we're on number 8, which I'm recused on, so Mr. Amberger is going to handle that one. You can.
Item number 8, 406 and 456 North McGregor Avenue, and 3772 and 3774 Shipes Lane. Is the applicant present?
We have a letter stating that they agreed to the whole thing.
Is there anyone here to speak? Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the application? Is there anyone here to speak against the application? Come on down, sir. Name and address for the record, please.
How are you doing? Roosevelt Edwards, 3769 Shipes Lane. And I see where within the application there are certain concerns dealing with flooding and some other environmental, I guess, impacts of which I'm not familiar with. If there was an environmental impact statement that was associated with the applicant coming forward as it was previously. If there is, I'd like to have that particular document so I can review it. It'd probably take me some time to do that. But if there is no environmental impact statement, I would want to table this until 6 months after that has been completed.
Mr. Olson, can you try to address his question there? I mean, I'm not aware of an environmental statement that's required for a development such as this.
No, sir, there is not a requirement through the zoning ordinance or subdivision regulations for an environmental impact study.
You have within the application here requirements for flooding and parking, associated parking
Yes, sir.
situations, and you're saying there's no environmental impact at all, or there's no requirement for documentation?
There's no requirement for a separate independent environmental impact study.
But they have to comply with all environmental regulations.
That's correct.
And build it to city code, building code standards, zoning ordinance standards, engineering standards, traffic engineering standards.
Could that be presented to me, or do I have to go and scroll all that myself?
We do
Or
not.
does it come along with this particular application?
No, sir, it does not come along with the particular application. Each of those reviews are done independently at the time of submission of plans for permitting. It's not something.
After the approval, after the subdivision approval, you ask for this.
Right, and that was the other thing, especially when we were associated with flooding, where there was also association with the flooding that would be occurring not on Shipes Lane, but on McGregor.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Come on now, ma'am. Your name and address for the record, please.
Good afternoon. Excuse me. My name is Mary Frances Craig. I reside at 3838 Mordecai Lane. I'm here to speak in opposition to the request, excuse me, about the zoning and what have you. I was here once before, had petition. I want to remind you all that this is an old neighborhood, historical neighborhood, and there's senior citizens in there. My age group now is the next. So the senior citizens that's right in the immediate neighborhood, they're not in condition to come down here. So if you all would agree to meet with them to really let them voice their opinions, we would gladly set up a time and a place for you to come. In the meantime, I want to speak on 406 McGregor Avenue, which has always been an address. The 456 McGregor Avenue, North McGregor, is a number that's just been made up by someone. I spoke about that when I was here the last time. In reading about the subdivision, I noticed now a new name on here with, besides Mr. Quinelli, a Hale addition, or perhaps it could be a female, I don't know. We would like to know more about how the decision to disrupt our neighborhood, quiet, decent neighborhood, is now being attacked to be destroyed. If you all will reflect back to your old records, you will notice that it was stated that Shipes Lane would not have any traffic on it. Now they're talking about moving over onto Shipes Lane and making a street or what have you. But I want to ask you all this. Since this has begun, have you been in the neighborhood to see how it's really being put together? The first thing, if you come down McGregor Avenue, you see that he's taken up some of McGregor Avenue. He's put a little barricade out at the curbing. He even took up some of the yard of 406 to put a sidewalk in. And the building itself is a big blue box that's sitting entirely too close to McGregor Avenue. And I don't understand that if everybody that's law-abiding has to go by rules and regulations as far as property lines are concerned, how can this man, and if you notice, that building is not a good 3 feet from the curbing. It sits out, it's not straight, it's catacorner, and you all need to look at this. Now, I'm saying this with all sincerity. Can you have it on your heart to know that you're being a part of destroying a neighborhood of innocent people? We have strived to keep that neighborhood decent and safe. All oak trees have been cut down, and now for these two properties, 3772 and 3774, always been residential. And so why does it have to be commercialized? And then you all of the Planning Commission and the village of Spring Hill is dictating what goes on in our neighborhood. Do you think this is fair? Can something be done that we be treated as human beings? This is all I ask. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for coming down. Anyone else to speak in opposition of this application?
Good afternoon. My name is Angela Brown, and I live at 3773 Shipes Lane. I want to thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak about this. I've lived at this address since 1998. I grew up in the area, so I'm very familiar with Shipes Lane and with Spring Hill in general. Shipes Lane has been a traditional residential neighborhood of single-family homes, and basically I think it should remain a residential neighborhood. I have nothing against improving the area in a residential neighborhood fashion. The proposal, as I understand it, concerning 406 and 456 North McGregor Avenue. As Mrs. Craig said, 456 North McGregor Avenue was once residential. The property was. Now it's zoned as a commercial type property. 406 is a residential, supposedly a residential home. Now they want to combine the two lots, from what I understand. I understand Mr. Quinley owns both. However, according to this map, he wants to extend the site at 456 North McGregor. Behind the building, there's to be approximately 10 parking spaces. He's incorporated what was, I suppose, at least 2 residential lots that are now called Lot 1 on this map, or potentially called Lot 1. He wants to divide up those 2 properties to where there will be, 5 to 7 different businesses. The parking areas are being changed on McGregor Avenue, making it more dangerous when you're coming out of Shipes Lane and turning onto McGregor Avenue. As people go from Old Shell Road area towards Spring Hill Avenue, as they get to that area now, there are near misses as far as accidents are concerned. I'm concerned about the fact that when or if this is approved, they want to make those 2 residential areas on Shipes Lane, they want to turn that into a parking lot. Those were traditionally homes. If they turn it into a parking lot, that's maybe 40 spaces or so, or more. They want a driveway leading onto a primarily quad street. As Mrs. Craig said, a lot of people who go up and down this street, if they're walking, that's one thing. We have people with babies. We have people who are trying to get back and forth to their homes. If these are opened up, that's going to create more problems as far as getting back and forth to McGregor Avenue. Not to mention, I have an unsightly parking lot right across the street from me. And so no, I'm not in favor of that. Basically, my other concerns, how is this going to affect the other properties in the area? I know that there are different types of properties on Shipes Lane. I had hoped that when Mr. Quinelli purchased these properties, perhaps he was planning to build residential areas. I cannot say that he promised anything like that. However, if you'd allow me to, that was the hope. He's also purchased other properties on the same street. Several of those properties on one end have been developed into new homes, which is fine. He's also, he's got one property where he utilizes it not necessarily as a home, but as a place where he holds his equipment or materials for whatever building projects may be going on. My question is, if we open this up, are we saying everything on Shipes Lane is now going to become commercial? Also, the other 2 properties that he owns on McGregor Avenue that he's not put down yet, but he's recently purchased, which are right next to my house, is this suddenly going to change from residential to commercial? When I moved here those years ago, it was with the understanding that this was residential. Everything was not perfect. However, there were possibilities of residences. If everything becomes commercialized,
Okay, ma'am, we need to move on to the next speaker.
Okay,
We're glad you,
thank
a little extra
you.
time, and thank you for coming down, but we need to move on to the next speaker if there's any more.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there any other speakers here to speak against this application? Your name and address for the record, please, ma'am.
Thank you. I'll only take a minute of your time. My name is Geneva Spencer Gales. I grew up in the area also. I have property in that area, and I live in that area. I did not get to come down last time when this property was initially rezoned. However, I do want to state my opposition today. A lot has been said already. I agree with what has been said, and I just wanted to go on record as to opposing these businesses being built on Shipes Lane. And I know you know there are 3 school districts in that area. This is just adding to the traffic that has already been increasing over the years. And I hope you would take these comments seriously and consider the people that live in this area. As Ms. Craig said, these are elderly people. So we're here to represent them, and I hope you'll take this into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions by commissioners? Okay. That, I believe, concludes our applications here. Take it back over. Chair.
We're now going to move into the deliberation phase. Number 1, Riverbend Estate subdivision. Mr. Olson, I had a question about this. I guess I'll wait until somebody makes a motion. I'm sorry.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve based on staff recommendations.
Second.
My question, Mr. Olson, is in the description, it talks about the 60-foot right-of-way and the plat illustrating a 50-foot right-of-way, and that is not addressed in the conditions. Do we need to address anything on that in the conditions?
The plat does show the 5-foot dedication, and approving the plat as submitted does not necessarily require that you add a condition to that effect, but it would not hurt to add it since it's already shown.
Thank you.
So would the motion need to be amended?
Yes, ma'am.
If somebody would like to make that motion, we'll entertain it. If not,
I'll amend my motion to include
Dedication of 5 feet is shown on the plat submitted.
dedication of 5 feet as shown on the plat.
thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion as amended?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. The second one is the Trifecta Development Subdivision.
Move to approve based on staff recommendations.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. Number 3 is Mount Zion subdivision, addition to Unit 1.
Question on, before we make a motion on this one, the pastor talked about they had a demolition permit that was provided, he gave us the number, so that requirement is taken care of, but we're still requiring a PUD though, correct?
If if there's only one building on the property and will only be one building, the PUD will not be required. So, but we still need the holdover for other reasons.
Okay.
So the demolition took care of the PUD, am I correct?
As long as there's not 2 buildings remaining on the property.
Okay.
Make a motion that we hold to July 20th to allow time for the applicant to provide a PUD application.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes. It'll be held over until the July 20th meeting of this body. Number 4 is 5383 Highway 90. It has been recommended for denial.
I'll make a motion to approve, subject to staff's revised conditions, but with an amendment to that requiring that the dumpster be moved inside the setback.
We can't hear you.
I'm sorry. I'll make a motion to approve that, subject to staff's revised conditions, with an addition to those comments requiring that the dumpster be moved back within the setback, outside of the setback.
Okay. Do you want to,
onto the side.
Are you doing the 15 feet fully across the frontage, or are you doing the 25 with the jog around the canopy as we discussed?
The jog around the canopy as discussed.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Number 5, Lipscomb subdivision. This application has been recommended for denial.
Would it be helpful for the staff to have a holdover? Were there still questions that needed to be, or things that need to be clarified on this case?
I think other commission members may have comments before that's fully discussed.
Do you have conditions if we choose to approve it?
Yes, we do.
Okay, can you please provide those conditions?
With a waiver of sections VD1 and VD3, and subject to following conditions. 1, each lot is limited to 1 curb cut. 2, compliance with engineering comments. 3, 4, 5, traffic engineering, urban forestry, and fire department. And 6, placement of a note, no future re-subdivisions unless additional adequate frontage is provided on a public right-of-way.
And I'm assuming the applicant would be agreeable to those recommendations.
I think I heard it all right, yes.
Okay. Move to approve based on those staff recommendations.
Second.
I have a question for Doug, real quick. Do you have any thoughts on precedent that's being set here, or the difference of this particular situation versus the other one referenced earlier?
Yeah, I don't recall the other one. Rick was doing some research on it as we were going through the meeting. The only other time I recall this coming up since I took over as your legal counsel was on some property down, I want to say on Bayfront Road, or some property that was on the bay, off Nollan Parkway, a 2-lot subdivision, I believe. And I told y'all at that point in time that you have the legal authority to change that prior condition. Just look at the surrounding area and the change in the surrounding area, and see if releasing that condition or overriding that condition is a reasonable thing to do. But you have the legal authority to do it. The other one that Mr. Byrd mentioned that y'all did a few months ago, I do not recall. I must not have been at that meeting.
Well, and another difference between the previous one that he mentioned that was back in March and this application is this is a family division. So that is something I think you could hang your hat on. The only concern there is, and why I suggested, or we suggested the no future re-subdivision is, even if they came back for a family division on Lot A, it would not be advisable to have that many flagpole lots where each would have a curb cut immediately adjacent to the next within the 25-foot frontage of each lot.
Right, okay.
It has been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Number 6, 3456 Stein Avenue and 304 Dogwood Lane, Parker Estates subdivision. This has been recommended for tentative approval.
Make a motion. Move to approve based on staff recommendations.
Second.
Are there any comments by the commission or any questions? All in favor of?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Properly moved and this motion passes. Number 7, 3740 Latigo Road. It has been recommended for a holdover to the July 20th meeting. I will make that motion.
Second.
All in favor of the
Before,
motion?
just another point of just asking the applicant to make sure they provide as much information as they can regarding floodwater management, fire access, and traffic, and all those areas that the residents were concerned about.
Any other comments? All in favor of the holdover?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. I'm recused on number 8.
Number 8, North McGregor subdivision. This application is recommended for holdover to July 20th. I'll make that motion.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Motion's held over.
Is there any other business?
Yes, ma'am. If you remember, a few months ago, there was discussion about an amendment to the ordinance to deal with temporary storage structures on private property. We have prepared some revisions to the definitions, or revision to the existing definition of accessory structure and the addition of temporary accessory structure. Mr. Anderson has reviewed those, as you did review it, didn't you? I thought you had. And Mr. Rossler, the council attorney, has reviewed it. They both think that this will cover what is the ultimate desire of the council members. So I wanted to present that to you. I'll give you an opportunity to look it over, and I believe at next meeting we'll have it on your agenda for the call for public hearing.
Have you presented it to us yet?
I thought it was at your places. If not,
It is.
Oh, it was on the, okay, yeah, I did see that. I thought it was page 2 or something else.
But it'll be on the agenda of the next.
yeah, we're going to have it on the agenda under other business to call for the public hearing.
Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned.